We're going to be talking about the beginning of the Mexican-American War. So to talk about the war, before we get into the action and the violence of the war itself, we got to talk a little bit about what was happening in the Northern Territories before the war even happened. Okay, so what's going on in New Mexico and California? So in New Mexico, you have tensions between the rich and the poor. You have issues over taxation. The Mexican government never really sent a lot of funds to New Mexico, and even the Spanish government before them didn't dedicate a lot of funds towards New Mexico. So in many cases, the settlers were pretty much on their own. So when the central government tried to tax the citizens of New Mexico, they found that they refused to pay those taxes. They were unable to get taxes from them. So in that kind of issue, you have citizens upset with their central government because of them attempting to tax them. You also have class tensions in the sense that the majority of the land in New Mexico was owned by a small few individuals and families, while many of the settlers were living an impoverished existence, maybe operating small farms, participating in trade, but for the most part, the wealth of the region, which existed in ranching and agriculture and trade with the U.S., was dominated by the upper class of New Mexico, known as the Ricos. And so this led to class tensions between the two groups. Eventually, you're going to see tensions arising in New Mexico due to rumors that the central government of Mexico was planning on selling New Mexico to the United States. These rumors start to go around. Individuals get upset, worried. They create a petition to the central government against the selling of New Mexico to the United States, and you even start to hear some calls for independence, right? So New Mexicans are actually calling for independence from Mexico because of these rumors about a possible sale to the United States, and they weren't interested. The majority of the lower class citizens of New Mexico were not interested in New Mexico becoming a part of the United States. Some of the upper class individuals were probably okay with that, but not the majority of the lower class. So you hear calls for independence, but nobody actually acts on it. There's no actual rebellion against Mexico, but there is political turmoil going on in the region because of these rumors about New Mexico being sold to the United States, possibly. Going over to California, you do have an actual revolt take place where you have the Californios, right, Mexican citizens in California, revolting against their governor, who was appointed by the central government in Mexico City. California already had a history of rebelling against government-appointed governors who were sent from Mexico to govern California. So when you have General Mitchell Torrena, Manuel Mitchell Torrena, taking over as governor appointed by the central government in Mexico, you're going to have a lot of individuals in California upset about this. And why are they so upset about this appointed governor? Because he brought with him an army of former convicts. And these convicts caused a lot of problems when they arrived there in California. They were involved in raping, looting, right, stealing. And so the settlers there in California were very upset with the rule of this general, Mitchell Torrena, who took over California, and he was appointed by the central government in Mexico. Eventually, the Californios decide to rebel against Mitchell Torrena and get him out of office, basically. So this turns into an actual physical, violent rebellion. And it takes coordination in both Northern California with the rebels in Southern California. So in Northern California, you have Jose Castro leading a group that will rebel against Mitchell Torrena, and Mitchell Torrena, the governor, will bring his army of convicts and face off against this rebel group in the north, in Northern California. Micheltorena will actually have a victory there in the north, and then from there he'll travel down to Southern California to put down the rebellion that's happening in Southern California, which is led by Juan Bautista Alvarado. But when Micheltorena gets to Southern California, him and Alvarado's group will meet and clash, and ultimately Micheltorena will submit and agree to leave California. So he basically gives up the post as governor in California. And so you have a successful revolt taking place in California, and this is even before the Mexican-American War starts. Now, the revolt wasn't to make California independent from Mexico. No, it's just that the Californios wanted to govern themselves. They wanted an actual person, a settler from California. In this case, it's a person by the name of Pio Pico who takes over as governor after Micheltorena is forced out of office. So they mainly just wanted one of their own to govern them because they would have the interests of the Californios in mind instead of the interests of the central government. Remember, the centralists are in control during this time, and so basically California wanted more local autonomy. They wanted to govern themselves for their own interests. So Micheltorena is defeated. Pio Pico is the next governor that will take over, and California will remain a part of Mexico. All right, so it'll still be within Mexico, but you don't have an actual, independence revolt taking place, but just a revolt against the governor himself and his army of convicts. Okay, so this is all taking place before the Mexican-American War even starts off. So there's already political turmoil happening in the northern provinces before the U.S. Gets involved.